Thank you very much for the introduction. Hello everyone, I'm Wei Jia. I'm now a lecturer at University of Southampton, but the work I'm presenting today is work I've done when I was a postdoc at Dartmouth College. This is a project with joint effort from many different institutions, including University of Maryland, College Park, Johns Hopkins University, and UIUC. So as you all in the session, we have heard a lot of stories about smart home devices, and they are everywhere. However, most of the current work focusing on their interactions with the vendors, third parties, and so on. However, there's a large space about interpersonal relationships that also occurs in smart homes, and we have to share data with them. For example, maybe if some of the thermostats in your apartment is installed by the landlord instead of by yourself, or if you're living with roommates or family members, then you probably have to share the device with them. Also, if someone in your family needs a caretaker, then they might need access to the data as well to do their job better. You could also have some devices is broken, so you have to send it to a handy person to get it fixed, and they would have access to the data. So with all these things considered, there should be a more nuanced access control system for the smart home. However, that still is not the story right now. So I just checked Google Home over the weekend, and I believe their current policy is still that if you're adding a new user to the system, the Google Home will tell you that everyone in this home can view all activities and access all devices and settings. So they are still using a one-bit-for-all approach, even though there has been multiple calls about a more nuanced multi-user access control system for the future. So why are there no changes made after so many years? One possible reason is that privacy is a very contextual concept. Based on contextual integrated, there are 5 components to a data transmission in the process. You have the data sender, data receiver, and also you have to think about what kind of data we are transmitting, whom this data is about, and how this data has been transmitted. Even if we are just thinking about smart home scenario where the data sender is likely to be fixed to the homeowner, there are still 4 more factors to consider. And if you consider all the possibilities, there could be thousands of combinations. And it's not only a nightmare for the developers to develop the systems, but also a nightmare for the users to use it. So in this talk, instead of asking how can we build a context-rich system, we first want to ask ourselves, how can we simplify a context-rich system? So there are many ways that we can simplify a system. There are mainly two approaches we are considering. The first one is trying to merge similar items. If there are 2 scenarios that are very similar to each other, then there's no point for user to give multiple inputs to that. The second part is about prioritizing critical information. There are going to be some of scenarios that could happen in your home, but not all of them matter. Some of them are going to, we hypothesize that some of them are going to matter more than others. However, if we want to simplify the system through these 2 approaches, we first need to have a very comprehensive understanding about people's privacy attitudes in various scenarios. And that is why we are trying to design a comprehensive study about people's attitudes in different scenarios. We are utilizing the contextual integrated framework and assuming the data center is going to be a homeowner, and then vary across different other components of here. So the first one we consider is about data recipients. We did a brainstorming session and also visited several past literatures to understanding what kind of data recipient that could happen in a home, which could include spouse, kids, roommates, landlords, and so on. We also want to consider what kind of information type that would be in a smart home scenario. So we look up online about different forums and also some statistics about the market. We found 6 most popular smart devices, and then we evaluated some of the top brands in these type of devices, trying to identify the most common data collections happens. And eventually it lead us to 18 unique smart device data pairs. And eventually we want to consider what kind of access control mechanism we can deploy for smart home systems. For this part, we are mainly focusing on technology that we can use easily implemented today, such as how long the access is going to be, whether there's somebody at home or not, or when the data has been recorded by the system. So with all these things considered, we recruited almost 2,000 US-based smart home owners. The sample we have is mostly gender balanced, and most of them are between 25 and 44. Our sample is more educated than the general population, with 70% has a bachelor degree or above. So let's see the first question. So with whom people would like to share data? What we did is that we used neighbors as a baseline and then run a logistic regression model on the data we collected. So from the top to the bottom, we rank it based on odds ratio. So it's ranking from the least comfortable parties to the most comfortable parties people would like to share data with. And naturally, we find it falls into three major groups. The first one is the incidental users, which mainly consists of people who incidentally visit. This is the group of people that participants are least comfortable sharing data with. And the second group is the domestic workers. We do find people feeling a little bit more comfortable sharing data with them, presumably because these are people providing some services that the participants want. And eventually we have the residents, which mainly consists of people who live in the home. It's not only about the family members, but also including roommates. So in that way, we can merging 11 data recipients into three major groups, simplifying the complexity of the system. The second part we investigate is how should information be merged. A lot of current smart home systems merging information based on device types. However, in our study, we do find data types matters more to people's data sharing decisions than device types. So using security camera as an example, we do find there's a significant difference between people's attitude towards usage history on the security camera from the audio and video data from the same device. However, if we are looking at audio data from a security camera and audio data from the voice assistant, we didn't observe significant differences between people's attitudes. In that way, we believe that information should be merged by data types more than the device types. And eventually, we also want to consider what kind of contextual factors will change people's opinions. So we do find there's a correlation between who we are talking about and what kind of data we are talking about, and also the overall surrounding of it. If you're a resident, you probably can have access to the data from the common areas, data from private areas. Even if you are a resident, it still likely be rejected by the homeowner. However, you also found that you probably do not need an explicit approval because you're living there. You probably need a permanent access to all the data recorded by devices. However, if you are not a resident, you probably can only have a temporary and local access. Which means you have to be in the home, and also the access should be revoked after a certain time period. For every time you visit it, you probably need an explicit approval from the owner as well. Some other cases we have also found, similar to previous studies, we do find people are more likely to share data if there's an emergency. However, in this study, we find people do want to add some limitations onto it about the data recorded time. So if the data is recorded around the emergency instance, then people are more likely to share data. However, it doesn't mean they want to share data that's maybe not around that time period. So what can we learn from this study? So first of all, we tested 11 different data recipients and believe they can be merged into three major groups, which simplify the system design. Second, for all the data collection happens in the home, they can be merged by data types, which also make it easier for users to configure. And finally, depending on the data types and the person we are sharing data with, we do find some of factors are going to matter more than others, and these factors should be prioritized when we are designing a system, especially about access control. So thank you very much for the talk. I have the link on the paper, and also I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
Thanks for the talk. I just wanted to know, were there any differences in perceptions across like the type of recipients or that you listed between the gender of the participants and the kind of backgrounds or the age groups that you've seen?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we did, when we are doing the regression analysis, we first included all the demographics. However, we didn't really find any significance across genders or their age or anything. So we excluded them in our later analysis.
Well, maybe I have a question. I'm quite curious in different privacy sort of theories, and in your paper you very quickly go into the theory of privacy as contextual integrity. I was just wondering, in terms of writing your paper, contextual integrity is just very widely used. Was this a big motivation going into contextual integrity? Did you consider other theories as well? Just wondering about your thinking.
Yeah, so one thing we are thinking, because we want to have a very comprehensive view about people's opinions in different scenarios, we want to do it in a very systematic way. And contextual integrity does provide a very systematic framework that we can use, and it's also has been widely recognized by the community about its effectiveness. So that is why we're going for the contextual integrity and also trying to analyze the making the whole methodology a little bit more systematic.
Any final questions, maybe? I know we're sort of coming to the end of the first day of fantastic talks. Doesn't look like it in that case. I thank all the speakers and also our brilliant tech support, and wish you a wonderful rest of the day and conference.